What kinds of jobs are available to writers for their first opportunity trying to break into the writer's room?
So there's a lot of jobs that you can kind of break into the writer's room with. For me, it was the support staff roles. So I was a showrunner's assistant on my first 2 shows. And there's also the writer's production assistant who goes and gets the lunches and does all the runs. And then, showrunner's assistant is kind of an executive assistant position that does a lot of the scheduling and ultimately is the conduit between the showrunner and the rest of the production. There's the script coordinator who does the legal clearances and does the distribution of scripts. And then the writer's assistant who takes notes in the room. Those are kind of not necessarily entry-level positions, but they can be entry-level if you're trying to get your first job in a writer's room. Another entry-level position is the staff writer. If you're getting hired for your script, then that is usually where you'll start off. There's obviously certain circumstances where you can write a pilot and that's your first job in a writer's room, or you come in at not necessarily the lower level. You don't come in at the staff writer level. Anything's possible, but I think that staff writer and the support staff are usually the most probable entry-level jobs in a writer's room.
And when you said taking notes, are they using like a laptop to continuity of the story?
Yeah, absolutely. They're just taking notes on what people are saying in the room and making sure that everything is accounted for so that if there's an interesting conversation and somebody wants to know what was said, they can go back to the notes and say, oh, okay, we talked about this, and oh, maybe this is a good, interesting idea. And they can figure out what was discussed and what was kind of agreed upon.
What are the hours usually for those jobs?
Usually, I want to say like 10 to 6, around that. Not too long, but 10 to 6 I think is like a regular office day.
How does networking factor into getting in the writer's room?
I think networking is pretty key, but also there's a kind of an art to it. You don't necessarily go to a networking event and find a writer's room job. For me, it was always through somehow getting connected to the showrunners. So when I was at Gaumont, I knew the head of production at Gaumont, who became the head of production at Apple, and she recommended me onto The Punisher to a showrunner who used to work with us on Hannibal, and also she had a relationship with. She gave me a really good recommendation, and that's how I got that job. My next writer's room job was through I had won a fellowship, and my boss was one of the mentors within that fellowship. And I submitted my resume to him, and he hired me a few weeks later. And really, I think that what you're trying to do is sell yourself to a showrunner.
And so, with that fellowship, what was the entry? What was required of you?
It was called the WAN Fellowship, and we had to submit a script and some sort of fee to enter the competition. And unfortunately, I don't believe it exists anymore. Oh. But if it does, people should definitely apply for it.
Okay, so it was a feature-length script?
It was a pilot.
A pilot, okay. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. And you were one of...
I think it was like 10 or 12 of us, a small handful of us, yeah.
Wow. What's the best way to get in front of people without being that guy or girl we've all seen them at events, we may have been them at one point, but we don't want to keep being that, but we still want to network.
Sure.
Not too aggressive, not too sort of opportunistic, but there is an art to it.
I would say if you're trying to connect with somebody in general, be polite and be respectful and don't be too pushy. Definitely don't pitch them your script. I would say really get to know a person on a personal level before you start to try to get on their radar for work. As long as you have a good rapport with somebody first and foremost, then I think that's a good foundation ultimately.
Yeah, the thing is, it's like in LA, a lot of people are very busy, and friendships, sometimes they're just fleeting here in LA. This is not a town where you really have sort of like steady friends if you're in the industry. So how do you cultivate sort of a relationship based on mutual interests in a town where everything's fleeting? And someone could be mad at you 2 years later.
Sure.
And you're like, I thought everything was good. What happened?
I mean, it's definitely...
It happens.
Sure, it's definitely a challenge. I mean, everybody's different and everybody has their own kind of boundaries and their own way of doing things. And, you know, they also have a life. Everybody has a life outside of their professional life. So I think that being respectful and also knowing that not every connection is going to be a friendship or going to be a professional connection is kind of a healthy realization to have. There's no sense in dwelling over somebody didn't want to connect with you at an event. It's totally fine and it's totally normal, and not everybody's gonna want to be friends with you, but you're not gonna want to be friends with everybody either. So it's just totally fine. You know, people naturally kind of gravitate towards people that they can relate to. So ultimately, yeah, you can just try your best. You know, what you want to do is avoid, you know, especially on like social media, pitching your script immediately. That I think is like the kiss of death. And you also want to just kind of know somebody and have like a good interaction with them and not be as transactional. If somebody's busy, you know, and you're trying to become their friend or you're trying to get on their radar, then I would say maybe you can either try to be patiently persistent, but also cut your losses and, you know, move on if nothing comes out of it.
Especially too, since everybody's online now, remote work, things like that, life has become a little bit more lonely, a little bit more isolated.
Yeah.
You know, there's been studies done that we're sort of in a loneliness epidemic. And how do you really meet people if the old ways of doing stuff, even going to a bookstore back in the 90s was a thing, and you'd bump into someone, oh, hey, yeah, I like this too. We don't do that anymore. Everything's online.
Yeah, I mean, you can meet people online too. I think there's an art to that, and it's something that I work on a lot. Or not that I work on, but it kind of happens organically. And I think that ultimately what you want to do, there's a lot you can do, but if you have social media, if you're posting and replying to other people's posts, once you kind of know who's interesting that you want to talk to or who you want to interact with, that's a good way for people to kind of know about you. There's also great networking events. I would say, some organizations have really good networking events, but it's really difficult to kind of get a job from those events. You have to figure out what you're bringing to the table and how you can help other people first and foremost.
Sure, and if everybody's there to get a job,
yeah,
who's the person supplying the job that's at the event, But not to knock those events. I get 100%. You can meet people. And film festivals are a great place too.
Yeah, Austin Film Festival. They don't, they should sponsor me, but they don't.
Oh, is that where you just got back from? In
No,
March?
I love Austin Film Festival. It's in, Austin, Texas every October, or right around Halloween, but I've met so many amazing people there. I think that's, There's plenty of stuff in LA, but Austin Film Festival is a great one in Austin, Texas, and a lot of screenwriters who are motivated will meet there and congregate there. I think that, if somebody's just trying to get connected, I think the Writers Guild Foundation used to have events where you can volunteer, and that's a great way to kind of meet other aspiring writers, people trying to break in and kind of build a community. I remember I made a lot of friends back there when I was volunteering. So, I would say JHRTS is another way to start to kind of start to build your network. The Awesome Assistants Facebook group, I think it used to be good. I hope it's still good. But yeah, there's a million ways to kind of get connected with people.
What else do writers need to know about landing their first job in a TV writing room?
It's really tough right now. I'll say that. I'll just say it's really tough for everybody. And, I've been excited to try to get back into a writer's room. I would say it's just very difficult. So have a backup option, have something else you can do until that time. And I would just say, that's really what people need to know. It's extremely difficult, even for the people that have been doing it for many years. So have the patience with yourself and don't beat yourself up if it's not happening at your timeline.
What would you tell young writers looking to brand themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the wisdom used to be find a niche, find a genre, and I think this is what a lot of professional writers use as well. Find a genre that you know better than everybody else that has some sort of market. So one of my friends said, okay, I'm not going to know the superhero genre really well because there's all these superhero shows on Marvel and the CW. So she really dug into it, and then she got a superhero show. You could probably make, have some sort of angle as like a procedural writer. And if you have kind of a mastery of that genre, it might help you write something that stands out when people are reading scripts for those particular types of shows. Yeah, branding is really kind of about what do people think when they think about your name. How can if you think about M. Night Shyamalan or Martin Scorsese or Stanley Kubrick or whoever, Quentin Tarantino, when you hear their name, you know what movies they do. You know what types of movies they do. Alfred Hitchcock does suspense movies. M. Night Shyamalan does these kind of thrillers with a twist. And they have branded themselves really well so that when you see their name in the theater, you should know what they're going to try to do. And I think that that's the way that we learned it when we were kind of breaking in. I don't know what it is now with people kind of switching genres, but I remember the Breaking Bad room wanted to do Better Call Saul as a comedy, but over time it kind of became another amazing drama. And I would say that it's good to kind of have a mastery of a particular genre, but it's not the worst thing to have other scripts outside of that mastery as well.
And so does that mean devouring a show a day? What does that entail?
It's different for everyone. I think ultimately, if you kind of have a conversational knowledge of a lot of different shows, then that's going to be helpful for you. And also knowing the reference shows if you're interviewing for a show is also important. But that's kind of maybe a little bit of a sidetrack. I think that genre mastery just means that you can kind of speak conversationally about a good handful of shows that are going to be of interest to the writer's room once you're in it.